Hello, everyone, and welcome to United Way. Live United. I'm Terry Westerfield, and joining me today, I am so excited because I have friends in from CASA New Orleans, and that is the Court-Appointed Special Advocates. I want to welcome to the program Joy Bruce, and Joy is the director of CASA New Orleans. Hi, Joy.
Hello.
Also joining us today, Caitlin Waugh, who is a CASA advocate. Hello there.
Good morning.
And we also have with us, I'm going to try and get this right, Kiana.
Yes.
Bradley, but you like to be called Keedy.
You got it.
All right, Bradley. And oh boy, does she have a story to tell us. First of all, again, thank you all for joining us today because it is a special show. Court-Appointed Special Advocates, or CASA, as I mentioned before, is one of United Way of Southeast Louisiana's community impact partners or partner agencies. Now, CASA provides quality advocacy on behalf of children birth to 18 in the foster care system. Volunteer advocates become the voice for the child in the juvenile court and represent the best interest of abused and or neglected children during juvenile court and child protection proceedings. And I can't think of something that's more important than the jobs that you all do. And Joy, maybe you can start us off a little bit, if you don't mind, because you're executive director. This has an interesting beginning here in the New Orleans area, and so many of us remember Judge Muley.
Yes, we're actually celebrating our 30th anniversary next year.
Wow.
We're very excited, and we're, working on preparations for a year of celebration. But we were the first program in the state of Louisiana. CASA was formed actually 10 years prior to when we were formed in 1987. Well, we started training volunteers in 87 and we were formed in 85. But 10 years before that, in Seattle, Washington, there was a judge who felt that he wasn't making decisions based on all of the information that he needed. Kids would show up in his courtroom and they'd be in court for a brief period of time, and he had to make really important decisions impacting the life of a child, and he didn't feel like that was enough information. And so he thought of this idea. What if we train citizens, community volunteers, to be the eyes and ears of the court and be the child's voice in court and make sure that their best interest is represented? And so, yes, in New Orleans, we were the first one in Louisiana and one of the first to start up outside of Seattle and that original one when the idea kind of spread across the country. And it's the exact same idea that it was there, is that we can train community volunteers to work with kids and to really get to know them and to really be able to speak about what is their best interest in the court, because that's the judge's job. The judge needs to decide what is in the child's best interest, and it's a difficult job to have when you've got all these different parties in court, and all of the attorneys, rightfully so, are representing the wishes of their clients, including the child's attorney, but the judge needs somebody who's going to be unbiased and who's going to do some research and say, this is what's in the best interest of the child.
How do the children wind up in the court system? I know we talked a little bit about foster care. Other things, do you sometimes, is it because they have become wards of the state?
Yes. We don't have any part in that process. Neither does the judge to a large extent. So if a community member or a mandated reporter, such as a teacher, makes a report and says that they are concerned, it doesn't have to be something that they know for a fact. It's, if you're a mandated reporter, you just need a report if you suspect that something's wrong. And then DCFS investigates that. That's the Department of Children and Family Services. And they go out and they see if it's a valid claim or not, because sometimes we're suspicious and there isn't anything wrong, but sometimes your suspicions are founded. And so if they feel like there's something wrong, but it maybe doesn't reach the level where a child needs to be removed from the home, then they can put services in place and try to keep that family together. But if the abuse or the neglect is so egregious that the child's in imminent danger, they can then make the decision that this child needs to be removed from the home. They need to call a judge. They can't just take any child. The judge says, okay, remove the child, and then they have to show up in court very quickly, within 72 hours after that. And that's when CASA comes into play. We get notice that there has been a hold order and that we need to go to court because DCFS has, gone through this process, and so we show up there with the judge, and then the judge makes a determination whether or not the child should come into foster care. And if the child does come into foster care, that's when we say, okay, is CASA appointed by the judge? And then we go back to our office and we say, do we have a volunteer that we can match with this child?
I want to talk to you now, Kiana, if you don't mind. You were a child of the foster system, and CASA has made a very, very important, or let's say has played a very important role in your life. Would you mind sharing some of your story, how you came to be involved with CASA?
Yeah, I could share some stories. So when I first came into foster care, it was because my mom was unable to care for me because, of course, she had a stroke. Well, she had several strokes, and she ended up in the nursing home. So as I came in with other sisters of mine, when we went to court, that's when I was I was appointed with my CASA worker, and it was Caitlin, of course, my CASA worker. And ever since then, CASA has basically impacted my life a good amount.
How old were you when you went into foster care?
I was about I would say 13 or 13
Which
or
is
14.
That's quite a pivotal age in a person's life.
Yeah, and now I'm 18 now, so it's been a long time since I've been in foster care. But CASA, I have to say, CASA has helped me the whole way. It really has.
And can you tell me what kinds of things are, because I want you to join in the conversation too, Caitlin, because this must be a very special bond that the two of you share.
Yeah, absolutely. As Katie said, it's been a number of years. I think you were 14 when you came in. I'm
14.
pretty sure you were. It's been a little over 4 years, and Kiana's lived in a variety of different foster homes, and there's been a lot of transition in her life in the last 4 or 5 years. So it's been a real pleasure to be with her. I'm also appointed to her sister's case since they came in together, and so we have. So I'm close with her family. We have ties that run very deep in that we've seen one another in a lot of different lights, and a lot of what I think I do for Kiana is support her emotionally. So there are things that we can do in terms of physical resources via CASA, and I advocate for her resource acquisition. But I also am just there consistently to talk to and to help Kiana navigate the transitions that she's gone through in her life.
I must admit that looking at you, Caitlin, you don't look like you're much older. You look like you could be, you're of the same. Well, no, I'm teasing that, but does that help? Because you're both young women and having... As I said, I'm not going to ask your age. We don't ask a lady's age here.
But we can talk about my age.
But you seem so young. I mean, did that help you? I mean, because people listening today are going to want to know, first of all, is there an age of which one can volunteer to become a CASA? We're going to talk about training and everything, but I'm just thinking the rapport that I see between you two, and I would think because maybe some of the things, and if you're talking about emotional support, that Kiana, you were going through, maybe you could identify with to the extent that of that similar age group, just growing up.
Yeah, well, I really believe that any two humans will find something to connect about and around. So Kiana and I do connect in part because I'm 31 now, and so I was in my mid-20s when I met her, and so there are certain ways that we talk together or interests that we have that overlap to a certain degree. Also, my mother was sick and when I was her age as well, so I think there's a certain amount of connecting about me actually being able to understand what it's like to be a teenager and process.
So commonality there.
Yeah. But so those are just circumstances that happen to overlap in our lives, but correct me if I'm wrong, Joy, but I believe you can be a CASA after 18, yes? Or 21?
It's 21.
And there's no cap to that as long as you can continue to physically show up as a CASA, then there are a lot of ways in which having, a grandmother or a grandfather figure would be really helpful in a child's life. So I can, and all the way through along that gamut, there are just a lot of different ways that any human could support another human.
Well, can you all three kind of take us through this story? Kiana, it's your story, but maybe you can start us off, and Joy and kind of Caitlin, fill in how you all kind of, the pieces started to fit. So your dear mother has had a series of strokes. You're 13 years old, and now you're in foster care. You must have been just frightened and bewildered.
Yeah, I was totally terrified of coming into the state because, as by being a teenager or a preteen, you could say it's 13, I think of it as a preteen. So first starting off, and you hear things about foster care, and it's like, no, I don't want to go into that, and it's like you don't want to lose your sisters either, and you don't want to be split up because that's what you hear. But as you get in, though, and you see how everything goes about, and by being switched from a variety of homes, and then like being able to talk to my CASA worker, and she being able to come see me and help me and like guide me through the way of by going through different foster homes, because I have to say, I guess that's why I'm so well-rounded, because I've been around different personalities and attitudes, and I have to be able to adjust to, any situation or any person that I meet. So, and I have to say, CASA has helped me out with that too, because Caitlin has guided me also along the way of like being able to adjust or probably thinking the way other people think, because there's many of times like where I went to her for advice, and she was able to give me advice like, well, maybe think about it from their point of view. So that helped me out along the way by going to different foster homes, and by meeting Miss Joy coming along my way. It was it was nice to meet Miss Joy and Mr. Jonathan and the rest of everybody also was with CASA. And, they've been helping me along the way too, but, with talking with Caitlin, and Caitlin coming talking to me, and by seeing them too as well, making sure I have everything for school, and making sure I have everything to graduate from high school as well. And just making sure I have everything and I'm comfortable and I feel safe in the home that I was in of my foster parent. So, and then when I actually got to a permanent home that I was actually happy in, and didn't feeling at ease and feeling like, I was treated as one of her own,
You felt like you belonged?
Yeah, I felt like I belonged, and it was like my home, like if I was at home with my own mother. So, and well, yeah, we called mother too, So, yeah, I really felt like I was at home, and I feel like, Caitlin and CASA and, by my foster parent being able to talk to CASA and talking to Caitlin and forming a bond with them, then I felt like, everything was good for me, and it was nice.
Well, it sounds like communication is almost everything right here.
Yes.
So you have Caitlin, you have Joy, and it's friend, teacher, advocate. You're all rolled up into one, and I have to ask, because you're talking, it took a while then, it sounds like, to find that permanent home where you felt you belonged, and you could call the folks their mom and dad and that kind of thing. So, Caitlin, what are the kinds of things that you or Joy, when you would have to advocate on Katie or Caitlin's behalf, that you would have to go to court? What kinds of things did you have to share with the judge without breaking any privacies, I understand? But because people listening today may not really know how that system works.
Sure. For every child, it's different. Katie's a really good student, so I spent a lot less time with her than, for instance, another case that I'm on. Not her sister, both her sisters. All of the Bradleys are really good students. They're really, really good. Yeah, just good.
Just a little backtracking there, huh?
But I've had other experiences as an advocate where the vast majority of the time is spent interacting with their teachers and trying to set up tutoring and that kind of thing. So that wasn't in particular Kiana's issue. One of the things that we really early on struggled with was trying to figure out when she and her sister were separated from in their foster homes. They went into care together and were in the same home, and it became clear after a while that they actually would thrive better apart. And that was a really hard decision. And so navigating that and really understanding the emotional nuances of that, and making sure, because the gut reaction is that you always want to keep siblings together. And so that's one of those examples where I think that original Seattle judge, you would assume, okay, we just keep them together. But knowing the actual situation and having that a little bit more nuanced information from a CASA is what he was originally looking for when he designed the program. And so I think I know that Kayana herself would have, in the very beginning, said, no, I don't want to be separated from my sister. That's not, that isn't in our best interest. But in retrospect, they've stayed really close. They have a really healthy relationship, and they're able to take care of themselves in a way that makes them both stronger. And a big part of being in foster care is figuring out how to be an individual and how to advocate for yourself. To a certain amount of growing up fast that just inevitably happens, and they're both navigating that really gracefully. So that was probably one of the hardest things to navigate in her case.
I was just saying, I'm looking at your face now, and Kaylin, you looked a little sad. So I can imagine as a young child, and yeah, you being separated from your mother. Now you're being separated from your sister, and the courage it took for you, Caitlin, and others of CASA, and to figure out, no, it would be better in the long run. And you feel that way too, don't you?
Yeah, I totally feel exactly the way Caitlin says. It's just crazy how sometimes, sometimes when you think a person don't know you as well, but then when you just hear it and just hear from their mouth how they just know you so well, it's just like, I guess it's just like a big shock to you. Like, so to me, sometimes just to hear out of Caitlin or Miss Joy or Mr. Jonathan from CASA, so just to hear how people know you so well, I guess I just get our butterflies inside. But it's just amazing to me how well they know me. So
one of the things that's interesting is that there's no such thing as one size fits all advocacy, one size fits all for, from one child to another, but even along the timeline of one child's case. And so Caitlin and I have kind of talked about how her relationship with Keedy shifted as Keedy's situation shifted. So when she first came into care, there was a lot of turmoil. There was a lot of things going on. She moved placements several times. And so that was very much an advocacy position. It was very much research the case, figure out where she needed to be, figure out, what should be going on with the sibling set. But as things settled down in the case and Keedy got into a really stable home with a wonderful foster parents, Caitlin's relationship changed in a really great way, because the other thing that was happening was Keedy was getting older. And so as kids get ready to age out of foster care, we hope that they start to learn how to advocate for themselves. And so the role of the CASA advocate, yes, they need to step in and advocate for that child sometimes, especially in court, but their role also becomes that of cheerleader as the youth starts to advocate for themselves. And so they're backing them up, and they're saying, you've got this, and you can advocate for your needs, and I'm right here if you need me, as more of a safety net. And I know Caitlin has kind of expressed that that's definitely what happened over the course of Keedy's case, and it's really what happens with, hopefully, all of our youth as they get ready to age out of foster care. You do this sort of dance between, am I advocating for them, or am I cheering them on as they advocate for themselves, which is great, because nobody's going to flip a switch at 18. And so you need to help them in that process before they turn 18 to learn how to self-advocate.
I was going to say, it has to be a skill set that's developed, because
Absolutely.
Self-sufficiency does not just happen overnight.
No.
And that's got to be a little bit frightening. Not only, Caitlin, you went through it, but then again, thinking about you, Caitlin, and as you put it so well, Joy, kind of a balancing act here, how you could know that you were getting all that you needed so that you could prepare. Because I would imagine at 18, any of us who just said, okay, now you're out, go on, goodbye. What do you do? How do you have enough money? Where do you live? Can you go to school? Do I get a job? What in the world? There's so many questions that any 18-year-old would ask themselves, even if they were fortunate to have everything. Caitlin, how did Caitlin help you? Did you know you wanted to go to school? Here you are. You've got to be proud. You're a student. You're in college. There are so many kids who want to go to school. And being a good student and the fact that you kept up the grades and everything, that helped you on your path?
Yeah, I have to say that helped me a great amount along my path. And, with Caitlin helping me along the way, saying, like, Kitty, you could do this, just keep on trying. Because I have to say there were some moments, like obstacles, big obstacles that came in the way, probably discouraged you or probably made it hard for me to keep going or keep pushing. But, with we always say this, with the support system, being in the village, because it takes a village to raise a child. So with my support system and my village, I have to say along the way, they really helped me and encouraged me to keep going and moving along the path.
Well, now may I ask, do you still live at home with your foster family, or you're all on your own, or where have you moved on to?
So I stay in an apartment on UNO's campus called Privateer Place. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I can say I'm on my own. But that doesn't mean I don't get no help from the CASA Association. So they still help me out along the way as well.
But it's just wonderful. I have to ask, you mentioned briefly, Caitlin, that your mother had an illness, and that was something that you had in common with Katie when you were young. But I have to ask you, Joy, how you got involved in CASA. What else? What it was impetus? There are a lot of social service programs out there. There are a lot of opportunities to volunteer. What spoke to you in particular about becoming a CASA? Caitlin, you're going to lead us off?
Sure. I originally heard about CASA because my maternal grandmother or paternal grandmother was a CASA in Brownsville, Texas, and she told me about her experiences with that, and so I just was aware that CASA existed. And I moved to New Orleans maybe 6 years ago, I guess, and I'd lived here for a couple of years, and I was feeling like I really wanted to dig in more deeply into the community. I wanted to be more connected to it, and my parents taught me that to be a good community member, you should be volunteering your time, so a big part of it also for me was that I, especially as a middle 20-something-year-old, I didn't have a huge range of age groups that I was spending time with, and so I was interested in just engaging with the community in new and different ways and with people that I wouldn't otherwise know. This has absolutely served me in that way. Not only to have this really deep connection with teenagers that I wouldn't otherwise know, but also that I have a connection with the child welfare community at large, and so the judges and lawyers and all these other really amazing people in New Orleans who are working on the behalf of children all over our community. And yeah, I just think that it's important to I don't have children of my own yet, and I have time. I work. I own my own business. I have a flexible schedule. It makes sense that I would give back to my community and be engaged in that way.
Well, I think it's wonderful, and I'm sure that Kaylin and everybody else, you touch so many lives, and you may not even realize it. And when out of the way, we always say children are our focus and our future. So that's something that spoke to you. And Joy is a similar story.
Somewhat. I had a rather complicated childhood and young adulthood, and I knew that at some point I wanted to use my own personal experiences to, one, pay forward the folks who had helped me along the way, but then also that I did have some life experiences that might help somebody else. And so I knew that as soon as I got myself in a somewhat stable position that I wanted to then be able to turn around and help. And I was probably about the same age that Caitlin became a CASA advocate. I became a CASA advocate in Baton Rouge when I was working, honestly, for the United Way there. So I was a CASA advocate, then I started working for the United Way. And when it was time to return home and come back to New Orleans, this seemed like an obvious fit, for a job to be able to work for CASA, where, I'd already been doing that for years and advocating for kids in Baton Rouge. I really wanted to continue that work here in New Orleans, and so I was thrilled that, I was selected for this position. And
I say we're all the better for it, that both of you ladies, and we're talking on and on about it, but you said you have to be 21 to be a CASA, and where I was talking about, I thought it was interesting, perhaps the younger age work with each other. But you mentioned, Caitlin, too, that grandparents, it's about, to me, I would think, communication and nurturing. So what is the criteria, Joy, to
You
become
have to be
a CASA?
21. You have to be able to pass a wide range of background checks. We have a number of different background checks, obviously. And then it's really about training and commitment. So if somebody were to express interest, if you were to call or email, we would send you a message explaining what the duties are. If that didn't scare you off, then we would then invite you to come to an orientation and learn a little bit more and sit down with our volunteer recruiter trainer and have your questions answered. If you're still interested after that, and some people aren't, and that's great. I'm happy to point people in another direction for a volunteer opportunity. Then we would have you fill out an application, which is rather extensive, and then come through training. We do about 35 hours of pre-service training. So it runs 4 weeks, 2 nights a week. We feed you dinner. But it covers a wide range of topics. I mean, obviously, we can't talk about everything you need to know before you start advocating in the court system, but most people feel better if they've been prepared first. So people often ask us, well, do I need to have a social work background or do I need to be an attorney? No. But we do have a lot of social workers and attorneys and teachers who do this because I think they've seen it. Right. Yeah. But that doesn't necessarily give you an advantage because sometimes you need to learn to take that hat off and be a little more objective because you're not wearing your social worker hat when you're an advocate. So we go through pre-service training. We cover a wide range of topics from basic, how does the court work, how does the court system work, to early childhood development, adolescent development, what is normal development for a child. So how do you have to have some sort of benchmark to understand if a child is developing well or not. We talk about poverty and domestic violence and substance abuse and all of those really fun topics. But we cover all of it and at least in enough detail, I would hope, and Caitlin could say more about that at least you have some experience going into it, so you have an idea that you know what you don't know, and if your case happens to go into more detail on a topic, then we can provide resources for that. And then after the training, provided you passed all of your background checks and your references check out, then you would be sworn in by a judge. It is an oath that you take that you're going to follow, what you've agreed to do in advocating for a child, and then we would match you with the child on our caseload.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. When you say match you, do you look then at the person that who's volunteered to advocate to see what kinds of strengths they might have that might be best for a particular child?
To a certain extent, yes. I mean, I think like Caitlin said, any person who cares can advocate for another person, absolutely. And sometimes we don't even know the strengths that somebody has until they get on a case. But some of our veteran volunteers, yes. We have some folks who tend to mostly advocate for teenagers or mostly advocate for younger kids. And it's something that they feel very comfortable with and they have a really great rapport. And so we will try to keep some of those folks on typical cases. Like I can think of one advocate who he's advocated for a number of teenage boys and he's very good at it. So chances are I'm not going to pair him with an infant because he's got a really great rapport and he understands that.
He's going.
Yeah.
Well, ladies, this has been a wonderful half hour. In fact, we are just about out of time. But a couple things I do want to get in. And I think I want Kaylin to kind of say the last word on why CASA is important, and then I'd like you perhaps to weigh in on a big event that's coming up. But can you go ahead and, Katie, how does it feel? How do you like being in that apartment? How do you like your life? And how do you ever say thanks to all these folks who've helped you get there?
No, of course I want to say a special thanks to everyone who has got me to the place where I am now. And I am greatly happy in my apartment that I'm staying in. And what I want to say about that CASA, which is a great thing about CASA, is that they not only just help you out along the way and by forming a great bond with you, they don't just like attack you saying what you should do, how a normal adult would just say what you should do. They do give you advice of saying like maybe this probably doesn't go right or wrong, but they know that everybody's a human and all humans make mistakes, but they help you guide you along that way, saying that we are all human beings. And that they don't judge you of probably because of a mistake or anything that you have made. They just help you out along the way, and I have to say, like, that's what every human needs, like help along the way. So special thanks to everybody for doing that.
Well, folks, we're running out of time right now. So, Joy, if you can tell us, how does somebody become a CASA in terms of what number do they call, what address do they go to?
504-522-1962, or you can go to casaneworleans.org. And we do have a big event September 5th, Rock the CASA. It's at House of Blues. You can go to the House of Blues website in order to get tickets. You can check out our Facebook event if you want more details about the lineup, but we would love to see you. There's a big VIP party. It will be great. Rock the CASA, September 5th.
And thank you, Joy Bruce, Caitlin Waugh, and Kiana Bradley, all with CASA New Orleans. I'm Terry Westerfield, and for United Way, live united.